Taking Heart, Finding Our Way Together, the podcast of the International Students' Conference 2024. Here we are. This is already episode 2, and there are only 7 weeks to go until the conference. Can you believe it? I'm sure you're as aware of this as we are, because we keep getting messages telling us how many creative things you're doing for your fundraising and how hard you're working the embassies on visa applications. Thank you for your great commitment. This episode is titled Conference Planning: What You Need to Know and What You'd Rather Not Know. I will be discussing with my guest Vincent, an organizer of past ISCs, a lot of things you might want to know about the event you are coming to. But before that, I need to mix up the order of the episode and announce things now. We want you to be part of the process over the next 7 weeks, and you have many opportunities. Our website and messenger are linked in the video description, so you can use these to contact us. First, we are collecting audios from all participating countries, currently over 20, and we're counting. So you too can be part of it and just use our messenger link below. Second, we are very happy to have guests on this podcast. So if you would like to create an episode with us, just write us. And third, we look forward to your messages in which you share your fundraising ideas and tips for the trip with us. There's a number 4 as well, because we would like to create a potpourri of wisdom, quotes and sayings from around the world. Send us yours, and we are collecting songs from all participating countries, so that in the end we have a big number of culture, a big part of culture mixed together. And if you have or would like to make recordings of a special song from your country, with your class group, with friends, please send them to us as well. But now it's time for the content. What has happened in the last week since the first episode? Well, I can tell you that there was a lot. As already mentioned, organizing the visas is also work for us. My colleague Gabriele is here to help you all, and she's doing very well. She's working very hard, and we are also currently working very hard to find more places for you to sleep, because the number of registrations is almost beyond our expectations. And that's great. Thank you all for signing up. Fundraising is also still very important. We have already been able to recoup 70% of all costs incurred, and we are working hard to cover the remaining costs. You can help us with a small donation via our crowdfunding on the website. Also, of course, by forwarding this appeal for donations. To collect donations of materials for the Peace Pageant play, we went to Basel last week by car and visited painters, seamstresses, carpenters, logistics companies, and of course art shops. Nathaniel has made great progress this week in finding a suitable hall where we can start building the puppets and store all the materials. And again, we have been in contact with the City Council of Basel, who have allowed us to use the huge Münsterplatz for the performance. We have also been working this week on articles about the conference that will appear in some European magazines. But if you can publish an article about the conference in your school magazine, for example, please get in touch with us. Well, we also worked on the program item called Fellow Travelers this week. We have been in contact with many young people who have a good connection to the youth section. We also need to stay in touch with the workshop leaders, many of whom have a long journey, and further work will go into the sustainability of the conference and efforts towards inclusion as well. All in all, it was a full week, and we are looking forward to starting the next one today. As an aside, there was also a course on meditation in the youth section this weekend, and we uploaded a great video about the Youth Access and Project Fund to our YouTube channel, which you can find through the youth section's website. But now I want to start with the interview for today. And my guest is Vincent. Hey, Vincent.
Yeah, I can hear you. Nice to be here.
We're doing this over Zoom because Vincent is not in Switzerland on site.
No, I'm in the Netherlands right now.
It's a good starting point to tell us a bit about you.
Yeah, so I'm Vincent, and I've been in a similar position than Noel is right now, I think. That was 3 years ago, when I was part of the team of the youth section to organize the International Students Conference. But for the last 1.5 years, I live in the Netherlands, after my time in Switzerland in Dornach, and I study water management here, and I'm enjoying it quite a lot.
Nice. It's so good to have you because I want to ask you some questions that could be interesting for the audience regarding the planning of conferences and especially international conferences. I think there's a huge difference in these two types of conferences. And I don't know, this is a really general question to ask you, but what are your experiences with conference planning? What did you do? Did you have an overall overview when you were organizing the conference? For example, the one in 2021.
I mean, generally, I organized some conferences. I think also similar than you did. We both also organized conferences within Germany, for high school students from Germany or from German-speaking countries, or regions. But then, yeah, comparing those to the international ones in Switzerland or the international one, in 2021, I think there are many differences. Like if you compare the national and the international ones,
Yeah,
but also time-wise, it was very different because, the conference that I, together with Tim, took responsibility for in 2021 was, during the pandemic, and that changed it all in a way. Yeah, but maybe comparing the national and international conferences, what I find really interesting there is that yeah, if you plan a global conference, in a way, it is hard to make it not superficial and to find questions or to really, yeah, find the questions that are important for all the people from all around the world that you invite to this conference, so that they are relevant and uniting us all, but that they still have, yeah, that they still have, everyone can relate to them also in their personal life back home. Um, and
right.
this is already difficult if you plan a conference in a country like Germany, where we have different regions, and of course, every one of us brings their own individual questions and problems and biographies. And already there, it is challenging to really bring everyone together. But on the international level, um, yeah, this challenge gets even harder, or not harder, but more interesting, I would say.
Definitely. Yeah, we experienced this in our planning process right in the beginning when we tried to find a good topic for the conference because we thought of the situation, not just our countries in at the moment where we are living, but the whole world because people from all over the world will come. At the moment, we have 20 nations and counting, so there's a big picture that we want to serve with our topics for the conference. It's really a challenge to try to find a common path between all of this. And I think this is also the current picture of our society, actually,
Yeah.
to find a common path with all of the crises. I mean, I don't want to talk just about the crises out there, but also the beautiful things and challenges. But of course, our planning process was very, very much influenced by the crisis coming up at the moment. So the topic finding, maybe that's also why we ended up making a peace conference, you could say so. Yeah.
Can I ask you which crisis, you are referring to? Can I ask this question?
Yeah, I
What
mean,
crisis do you see for maybe young people that are searching right now and trying to find their way through or with anthroposophy?
I think that there are different layers of crises in the world, actually. And there are very obvious ones. And I'm very glad they're so obvious now. For example, the climate crisis as the first and biggest one. But you could say that the climate crisis is just a symptom of an illness that lays in a deeper layer. And I would say in the relationship between the human and the earth. And this relationship is broken. So I think the rupture lies in such a deep place that all of the crises come out of that. For example, when I look at the youth, there's a huge increase of suicide and addiction and not relate to the world anymore. All over the world, you can see this not just in the countries with poverty, but also in the countries with extreme wealth. Well, and then, of course, the wars that came up in the recent years.
Yeah.
So I think our task as a youth section, as the youth section at the Goetheanum, is not to deal with each and every of all of the crises in the world, because we are not experts in every field. But I would say we are experts when it comes to the youth and maybe the, as it referred to in the name of the youth section at the Goetheanum, of the spiritual striving of the youth. What I mean by that is the inner crisis. And I think our topic, taking heart, finding our way together, is a good answer to this, as well as the other ones were courage and trust. These are really answers that tackle the struggle that we are dealing with as young people.
I think that's quite interesting, and it's then is good or the right way to choose for these topics that are just like overarching it all. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
and I think everyone can relate to this from their personal experience, but also maybe in their community at home. And if you really find a way to dig deeper into these topics and find a way to work with them, then you can actually change something in your personal
Yeah.
life, but also in the lives of the people around you, if they are open to it.
That's also a point of criticism. Well, our topics are also so wide ranged. It's nothing concrete. I don't know. These are so big words, and we try to deal with it, making a conference. Why don't we make a conference about education, just as a subject? I experienced in the last times when I organized conferences that it wasn't enough for the 5 days. It wasn't enough of substance to fill in, because this is such a great opportunity to have so many people from so many different places. I think it's a very good path we take when we take these big questions, not with the aim to find concrete answers, but just to go together in finding answers, because the way is much longer, maybe.
Yeah,
And it's good to have a long way in front of you when you go together.
yeah,
Yeah, that's how the topic planning went. And but now that we are already speaking about this different layers of a conference, Vincent, what do you like better? The substantial part of the planning, like the topic and the speakers, the program, shaping it, or the pure organizational part, for example, finances or accommodation, travels, and food, because there's such a big part of
hmm,
organizing conferences that is really just, I would say, laptop working.
yeah, yeah. I find it all quite interesting, and in the end, it needs all together to make a good conference or a good event. And what I find challenging there is to, depending on the structure of your team and how you work together, to be able to build this foundation it needs for the conference to run. So you have funding, you have accommodation, you have food, you have the venue, the Goetheanum in this case. to organize all this and then still have the, yeah, or always having in mind that you are doing this to host a space, that should be a space where yeah, everyone who's attending can like really in a free way work with the topic that you've given this conference. And also for ourselves, the ones who organize it, to be able to, yeah, prepare and work with the topic in advance while preparing all this organization that is needed to run the conference. This is what I find quite challenging. I like all of it because it needs all to make a good event and good conference. This is what I experienced back then and still do if I organize events to really, yeah, do it all in the quality needed.
Sometimes it's really hard to bring this together, I think.
Yeah.
Also, dear audience, this is why we make this podcast. So you can listen to it and you can start reflecting about the conference's topic and all of the parts connected to this. But I gotta admit, sometimes it's really hard to keep this aim while just being so overloaded with the work of fundraising and finding accommodation, organizing food.
I can really recommend, or I really like to take a step back and take a moment or take a time sometime during the day to just shut off all the practical everyday questions you have to carry out every day and just think about the topic or about your own topics that might be related to the conference topic already. And I don't know if I can put it in nice words, but this is something what I experience as a high value on these international conferences because they are so far away from home and from what is going on there day to day. And this allows us to really disconnect from our everyday tasks, take time to work with the topic in this sort of bubble. And I really like it. Sometimes when I'm part of international conferences, doesn't matter if I'm part of organizing them or running them or if I'm just participating, I ask myself, well, why do we even do this? You know, we could
Yes.
all just stayed at home, and it would still be a good life, and we could go on and also develop ourselves. But still, I think it's worth coming together, disconnecting from our day-to-day life, and really, yeah, find the time or take the time together to work on a common topic.
I will speak about this more, but I want to say now the time of the time range to organize this conference is 1 full year of really intensely meeting in the organizing team and planning. And the foresight has to be even longer. So,
Yeah,
mm,
I mean it has its different phases, right? So maybe in the very beginning you start with looking at a date that's maybe 2 years ahead or 2.5 years. And then you start feeling what is needed right now and what is relevant now that we feel is still relevant in 2 years when the conference is actually happening.
this is this is 5 days, you know?
Yeah,
That's what's
yeah,
so
yeah.
crazy. You're
But this is what's
planning.
so nice if the process is so long ahead that you really work with it for such a long time as a group, but also, I mean, you as a youth section, for quite some time, you're already like exhaling this topic of taking heart. This makes everyone wonder and think and also start thinking about the topic. And then when you come together, it can have such a density and such a deep quality of working with each other that these 5 days, yeah, they easily outrun whatever has happened before. You know what I mean?
I know, I know. That's great. And I think it can also help to see the conference happening at the end as a starting point and not
Yeah,
as as an end.
yeah,
Because when you look at all the friendships made on the conference or the ideas, impulses, initiatives coming up that arise out of a meeting from students from the one end of the world, meeting the ones living at the other side, this is really a starting point, actually.
yeah.
Maybe this is also a good picture to come to an end. But what I would definitely want to ask you, what you would like to share what is exciting about the Goetheanum and the Goetheanum campus. You have lived here some time,
Yeah,
and this is a big part of the excitement coming to
yeah,
Switzerland, actually.
yeah. Yeah, I think I wouldn't like to look that much at the time that I lived there because that was during COVID, and I think this place couldn't really live and breathe at the time. But I think we already talked about it. Goetheanum and Dornach and the whole hill there really is a place where the time moves a bit slower, and it is slightly disconnected, and maybe that's also sometimes challenging for the initiatives taking place in Dornach to stay connected with what is happening in the world and the actual world. But still, it has a great opportunity to, yeah, since time moves a bit slower, to really start thinking without worrying about everything else. And I think it needs this sort of break or this point in the timeline where we move a bit slower and take the time to think and come up with new ideas and thoughts and impulses that we then carry home and bring them to life at home. But this is what I like about this place the most, regardless its history and what this place maybe or what has started at this place around the world. But this is how I experience it and what I think is also the strength of the place, that we can use for our common advance.
It's a nice picture that a lot started out to the world from this point, this piece of land, and that so much is coming back to this hill now. I don't know if there are many other places of land that have seen more people from different parts of the world than this hill
It's true.
in the last 100 years, starting with the building of the first Goetheanum in the First World War. So many people from different nationalities working together. This was the starting point. And looking at this place now, not at last, our International Students Conference, there are so many people from around the world being inspired by this place and coming here that I think this in itself is something really exciting and worth the work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for having me and good luck with the rest of the organization.
Please bear with me for the audio quality of the Zoom recording. We might still have to figure out how to do this in a better way because our next guests will be hosted also in this format since they're not here on site. But they will come for the conference, of course. Yeah, I want to share a bit more about our planning process and dive into it a bit more detailed. So, I haven't mentioned yet, but we had the first meeting for the ISC in the middle of March 2023, almost a year ago, and it was very exciting this weekend. We were just people who had come together with the same idea, and we didn't know each other, but the atmosphere was good. Our group came from the USA, from Japan, Argentina, Belgium, and Germany, and somehow the idea was still so vague and the conference so far away. Afterwards, I went back home and actually I prepared for my A levels, just like a couple of younger members of our team are doing at the moment. And yeah, we actually took a lot of time to approach the possible topic of the ISC 24 this weekend. Just as we took some time between our meetings, which took place every second month or so, and in between we met digitally. Yeah, I think the next meeting was in April, and we read a text from the novel Momo by Michael Ende, who's a German novelist, which I will read out at the end of this episode today, I think. Yeah, we got really deep into the content and juggled the themes of so many topics, right? It was really a lot. The themes of freedom, intuition, truth, hope, and home, which I found interesting, change and movement, Yeah, a lot of our discussions centered around the heart, what it means to be heart led, dreams and ideals, future, receiving impulses from the future and meeting them halfway. That was a sentence that I wrote into my book, and I'm glad that I remembered it because I think this is really a nice imagination. Our blackboard was so full of sentences like this: meaning of life, life of meaning, keywords like community, climate crisis, poverty and wealth, values, fear, justice, happiness, fluidity, peace. These words that entwine around our feelings, around our hearts. And it was a really big question. How should we bring all of this together? Such a diverse range of important topics, right? And we might as well do something completely different. We had to take heart to dare to try and include all of this in our conference. To try to find a common path between all of this. But that is also the current picture of our society. I think I mentioned that speaking to Vincent today, that there are so countless stimuli that seem important, and we should not dissolve ourselves by trying to fit in with everything, but rather we should try not to become isolated and bring things together. We must have the courage to continue on our path as a community. We have all become lone warriors, I think, looking at society, but actually now it's about being vulnerable again, coming together, and then being courageous from within the community, taking heart. And one more thing became increasingly important in the coming months of 2023, which was peace. To speak about this more substantially, I think we are now at a point where we need all of you to take up and carry forward this content related impetus. The idea becomes reality, and reality serves the idea. We hope that you will become the carriers of this idea so that we as a community can create a net on which the conference can land, and you, as the reason for this event, form an invisible, important one. You fill the space and turn our net into a carpet with countless individual threads of different colors. The text from the novel Momo that I'm going to read to you now at the end of this episode comes from a really wonderful book. It's a book for children and adults. It's about a little girl called Momo who appears in a town one day and can listen to people like nobody else can. She simply listens to people who become her close friends. People come to her with a dispute and talked and told her, and because of her good listening skills, she didn't have to give any wise advice in the end, because the people figured it out themselves, which is so beautiful in my opinion. In the story, the little girl becomes the biggest and most dangerous enemy or opponent of the so-called grey men, who convince people with an icy coldness that they have no more time. In her search for help for her friends, Momo meets Master Hora. And he says, "Dear Momo, I will now entrust you with a secret. Here, from the house in the Never Never Alley, comes the time of all people." Momo looked around the room, then asked, "Do you have the many clocks for that? One for each person, yes?" "No, Momo," Master Hora replied. "These clocks are just a hobby of mine. They are only highly imperfect replicas of something that every human being has in his chest. Just as you have eyes to see light and ears to hear sounds, so you have a heart to perceive time with. And all time not perceived with the heart is as lost as the colors of the rainbow to a blind man. and the song of a bird to a deaf man. But there are, alas, blind and deaf hearts that perceive nothing, though they beat. And once my heart stops beating? Asked Momo. Then, replied Master Hora, time will also stop for you, my child. You could also say it is you yourself who goes back through time, through all your days and nights, months and years. You wander back through your life until you come to the great round silver gate through which you once entered. There you go out again. And what is on the other side? Then you are there where the music comes from, which you have sometimes heard very softly. But then you belong to it, you are a sound in it yourself. Quietly, Momo asked, are you death? Master Hora smiled and was silent for a while before he answered. If people knew what death was, they would no longer be afraid of it. And if they were no longer afraid of it, then no one could steal their lifetime. Then all you have to do is tell them, suggested Momo. You think so? Asked Master Hora. I tell them with every hour I allot them, but I'm afraid they don't want to hear it at all. They would rather believe those who frighten them. So with this as a little ending text for today, I want to remind you that in the topic of taking heart, there's not only topics like hope, courage, love and trust, but also time. I see you next week.